This episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/SBO. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and we have two massive stories coming out of Santa Clara at Niners HQ. One broke late last night. The other has to do with Dre Greenlaw's potential free agency market and whether he'll be in San Francisco in 2025 and maybe beyond. First, want to ask you to like, share, subscribe, and if you want to go to any sporting event or concert this year, don't forget to use that promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Let's start with the news that happened this morning, that happened on social media regarding Dre Greenlaw's future. If you haven't seen it already, Fred Warner's wife posted on TikTok either last night, but it caught news and wind this morning of it, where it looks to be a going away party for Dre Greenlaw's fiance. And in return, obviously, Dre Greenlaw himself. If you haven't seen the video yet, I'll put it on the screen right now. For the audio listeners, the video is captioned POV, your team didn't make the playoffs and the NFL free agency is taking your best friend to another team, and we are all severely unwell. Now, obviously, we all know that the emotions are running high after a pretty terrible season, and for a player like Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner, they've been together since 2019, multiple NFC championship games, 2 Super Bowls. There's so many emotions tied. Their bond, I'm sure, is one of the best or one of the tightest on the team. When Greenlaw was trying to come back from the Achilles injury this year, you heard Fred Warner say, I can't wait to have my brother back out there. It means everything to me to have Greenlaw alongside me once again. You saw when Greenlaw tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl, the reaction Fred Warner had, the emotions they had. In fact, you can argue that was the turning point of that Super Bowl, and where Travis Kelce, who had 1 catch for 1 yard, ended the day with around 8 catches for 90-plus yards in the Super Bowl win for the Chiefs. Now, okay, it's one social media post. It doesn't mean that much, but it's what Dre Greenlaw's fiance posted after Fred Warner's wife posted her initial video. The follow-up from Greenlaw's fiance read, we quite literally have been blessed with the best neighbors the past 2 years. Our last block party. Now, this could be an inside comment. It could be something that only the teammates' wives or fiancés or partners know what this means. I'm not a wife of one of the players on the team or a partner of one of the players on the team. Maybe they do this all the time. That said, that last word, that last sentence, our last block party, why would you say that unless you were believing this was going to be Dre Greenlaw's last season in the Bay Area with the San Francisco 49ers? Certainly an interesting choice of words from Greenlaw's fiance. Now, I do want to specify and clarify that this doesn't mean that Dre Greenlaw is officially not returning to San Francisco. This can mean one of two things. This could be, yes, a going away party. Yes, he's not going to come back. Yes, the Niners have indicated to Greenlaw himself that, look, we're not going to pay you what you're asking for in free agency and going to maybe move on elsewhere at the linebacker position, whether it's Steve Winters or go look somewhere else in free agency or the NFL draft, or maybe the wives and the fiancés are throwing a just in case going away party of, we don't know what's going to happen, but you're going to be a free agent. You're likely going to test the market. You may come back, but in case you don't, let's give you one last hurrah with the San Francisco 49ers and with the relationships you have built while wearing the red and gold the past 5 seasons or so. I do think that for Greenlaw, while it does look like, if you read into the videos and believe what they're saying, that this will be Dre Greenlaw's last season in San Francisco. In fact, it looks like Dre Greenlaw's not going to be back with the Niners next year. A lot of that speculation, which we're doing here on the show currently, goes against everything Kyle Shanahan said leading up to and after Dre Greenlaw returned this season. Now, Greenlaw only played 34 snaps this year. He played one half against the Rams. He looked phenomenal. The calf acted up. Then he played 4 snaps against the Dolphins. They were like, oh my goodness, you're injured. Get off the field. And they shut him down for the rest of the season, being the last 3 games or so in 2024. But if you rewind the clock, when Greenlaw returned and shortly after the Rams game, Kyle Shanahan said they want to bring back Dre Greenlaw. They want to keep him here for a long time, and also including Talanoa Hufanga in his comments. So the Niners all of a sudden deciding what to do with Dre Greenlaw in the span of 3 weeks sounds a little bit rash and like it doesn't really add up to what this team usually does. That said, we don't know what those medical records are. We don't know what the MRIs may have shown that would lead the Niners to shut down Greenlaw for the rest of the season. We have talked about here on the show that while you want to have Greenlaw back, we all saw the impact he had against the Rams in his return. That first half of play was the best defense performance this team put together all year long. It made many of us say, like, maybe Nick Sorensen isn't too bad, actually, because of how good Greenlaw performed and how good the defense around him was impacted. And really, they gave up 12 points, no touchdowns to a relatively good Rams offense with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua. They even shut out Cooper Kupp in that game and gave the offense multiple chances to win that game with simply just one touchdown, and they couldn't get it done. Greenlaw's impact is unmeasurable with what he means to San Francisco. But what if the MRIs indicated something else? My mind goes back to last year. Before Greenlaw tore his Achilles, the left calf was bothering him. He tore the right Achilles in the Super Bowl. With the left calf now acting up again, maybe they're like, wait a minute here. The last thing we want is to commit big-time money to Dre Greenlaw, a linebacker in his late 20s, inching closer to 30 each and every year, who already has one torn Achilles, who he's come back from. Then the other one may be, in a way, a ticking time bomb where we don't want to give you $10 million a year, $15 million a year, whatever the price tag may be, a large chunk of money. We don't want to commit that to a player that, in reality, may not be able to stay on the field for a long time and last a full season next to Fred Warner and company on this defense. Now, that's obviously speculation, but it certainly has to be taken into account when committing big, large chunks of money to a player at the linebacker position, again, in his late 20s off a massive injury and showing signs of maybe another injury lingering throughout the rest of his career. But I also think that, again, diving further into the offseason speculation, the Niners, I think it would be really smart, and maybe this is what they're doing. I don't think that Greenlaw's fiance or Greenlaw's wife or even Fred Warner's wife know exactly what's going to happen. I think there is this belief that he could leave. He could be elsewhere in 2025 and beyond. Buccaneers fans are already on Twitter saying, bring him to Florida. Maybe you see that. He's an Arkansas guy. Maybe he finds himself in kind of the South next year. You'd never know. But I do think that the Niners will be really smart to let Greenlaw hit the open market and see what other teams are willing to pay. That way they know what the money is they're going to have to match when he hits free agency. I think if you look at the two parallels in regards to Greenlaw's market and Hufanga's market, I think both those players should hit the open market. I think both of those players are going to get different contracts. Hufanga's younger, looks to be more healthier, albeit the play is lesser than Greenlaw's history of being a near all-pro player almost every single year he's been healthy. Hufunga's younger, he plays safety, he'll probably get paid a pretty large chunk of money, whereas Greenlaw, again, a little older, off an Achilles. I don't know if teams are going to commit a large paycheck per year to a player like Dre Greenlaw compared to Hufunga, where San Francisco lets this thing play out and says, okay, Greenlaw, test the market and see where the market's at for him. They may be able to find a cheaper contract for him in return. But there is one more wrinkle to this story. I'm not sure if you saw after Greenlaw returned in the Rams game, he got injured in that game, or at least got worn down in the second half and didn't play in the third and fourth quarters. Matt Lively, I think it's a KPIX reporter, talked to Greenlaw in the locker room and said, hey, Greenlaw, what do you want for Christmas this year? Greenlaw thought about it for a second, turned to the camera and said, I want some money. That to me is going to be like, that is a more indicative video and statement compared to Fred Warner's wife posting a social media video saying our last block party, or Greenlaw's wife saying our last block party, right? Well, those things certainly feed into the idea that Greenlaw may not be back this year. I think that Greenlaw's indication of I want money may be a more pivotal factor when it comes to deciding if he'll be back in 2025. But what do you think about Fred Warner's wife's POV TikTok post and Dre Greenlaw's fiance saying our last block party? Comment down below. Will Dre Greenlaw come back in 2025? And are you open to the idea of letting Greenlaw test the open market, risking him leaving, but also maybe giving you a chance to re-sign him for cheaper this off season? Moving along with the show, last night around 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock on the Pacific Coast, I was watching Squid Game season number 2. My wife was sitting there on her phone scrolling, and I said, oh, honey. She was like, what? I go, Brian Schneider finally got fired. The San Francisco 49ers have finally moved off of special teams coordinator Brian Schneider. It was, if you ask me, the one move they had to make this offseason. I get the Nick Sorensen debate of will they, won't they fire him is certainly raging on social media, but if there was one bona fide had to make guaranteed move, it was firing Brian Schneider. To be clear, though, I would never advocate for someone to get fired. Losing their job certainly sucks, and I wish him well. But when you're not getting the job done year after year after year, something has to change. And I'm sure somewhere some team will pick him up. Maybe he finds a home with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trent Baalke. Maybe he goes back to Seattle. You never know what can be in store for a coordinator like Brian Schneider. But this year was the final straw for when he got hired, was supposed to be a breath of fresh air on special teams. That never happened. When you look at every single year Brian Schneider has been the special teams coordinator in San Francisco in regards to DVOA, in 2022, the team ranked 15th. Not that bad. It was an improvement over Richard Hightower's tenure in his last year in San Francisco. They fire him, bring in Schneider. First year is an improvement. 2023, though, a 10 spot DVOA drop to 25. Then this year, the team has they're ranked 31st per DVOA, with the Titans as the only other team worse than them this season. When you go from 15, 25, and 31 in consecutive seasons, something is clearly off. And this year, I think, may have been one of the worst special team performances I have ever seen by a Niners roster this loaded. And I get injuries play a factor into it, but when you look at this team's EPA, the expected points, right? This team had a minus 60. You were actively hurting this team, negative 60 points. It was missed field goals. It was blocked punts. It was blown punt and kick coverages. Like, it was a terrible altogether year by the San Francisco 49ers special teams unit led by Brian Schneider. Every single game, you were just waiting of, okay, when is that special teams blunder going to happen? And without fault or without a doubt, every single game there was a special teams blunder. And when it didn't happen, we all cheered and said, wow, it wasn't that bad, which is a really bad place to be if you're a coordinator. It would be like the offense only being able to muster 7 points a game. And you're like, well, we're going to score one touchdown. When is that one drive going to happen? And you're kind of waiting. Whereas the other 6 drives you have are interceptions and fumbles and punts. You're like, well, this just can't go on any longer. Brian Schneider simply had to go. And I could argue this is the best possible news to kick off the 2025 season or off season for the 49ers. You get rid of your worst units. Coordinator, hopefully find somebody else, bring them in. And you don't have to be top 10, but can you be top 15 again? Can you be average again? That is all Kyle Shanahan wants. And in fact, may be all this team needs when they have this loaded of a roster, when they're healthy. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be average for a roster like this to be competitive and not cost them week in and week out. It is simply a move that had to be made. And I think the biggest example of this needing to be done is I correlate it to, Brian Schneider called Jake Moody, right now a bust of a kicker, 3rd-round pick, called his private workout, quote unquote, perfect. I remember being in that newsroom, listening to Brian Schneider talk up Jake Moody, and I was like, oh, I didn't love taking a kicker in the 3rd round, but he's calling this thing perfect. That's a pretty big word to use when you reach for a kicker in the 3rd round and you're trying to sell this franchise and this team and the fan base on, hey, this was the right move. Trust us, trust me. It's going to pan out. He called it perfect. And unfortunately, Jake Moody has been far from perfect. In fact, you can argue he's a bust. The 31st ranked field goal percentage this year amongst full-time kickers. Keep in mind, he's the currently highest drafted kicker in football. Not great. But I compare it to when a head coach or GM draft a first-round quarterback. You're expecting that quarterback to change and alter your franchise. Usually, unfortunately, if they're a bust, you got to get fired. You're going to get fired unless you're Brian Daboll with the Giants or you get lucky here or there. I mean, unless you're Kyle Shanahan and company and get saved by Brock Purdy, the odds are you're going to get fired by missing on a first-round quarterback. This essentially has been Jake Moody being Brian Schneider's failed first-round quarterback. He's a 3rd-round kicker. He's been a bust. If there is one way to just say 1 + 1 = 2, it is Jake Moody's been a bust. Brian Schneider advocated for him in the 3rd round nonetheless. He simply had to go, and it makes it worse knowing that the man Schneider replaced, Richard Hightower, who in his own right wasn't doing well in San Francisco as special teams coordinator, this past year with the Bears, a number 5 ranked special teams unit. Not a great look when the guy you let go is having a pretty good year with the Bears, leading a rather bad team to one of the best special teams units in football. But what comes next? Who do you look for to replace Brian Schneider? Unfortunately, there usually isn't just great coordinators growing on trees. You have to find somebody or, in fact, maybe overpay for some coordinators. I think one name out there is Darren Rizzi, who was the Saints interim head coach this past year when they fired Dennis Allen. He could be someone who wants a fresh start elsewhere, come to San Francisco, pay him a larger chunk of money, hire him, kind of poach him from the Saints. I believe they'll get a new head coach if they want to kind of rebuild and restart there. They're going to have to likely fire Darren Rizzi. He will probably be elsewhere in 2025. Look to him to be a potential replacement for Brian Schneider. The other name out there I think is kind of a long shot, but a potential replacement is trying to poach John Fassel away from the Dallas Cowboys. Again, may not happen. There may be some head coaching or some coaching turnover in Dallas. Time will tell what Jerry Jones wants to do in Jerry's world. All indications show that McCarthy will be back, but let's say Fassel sees things on the rocks. He's already coached the Rams a couple years ago. Why not try to poach him away from the Dallas Cowboys, which this year were one of the best special teams unit. It's in football, great returning, great coverage. One of the bigger matchups this year, which surprisingly San Francisco fared well in, was playing the Dallas Cowboys on special teams, who Rico Dowdle was one of the best returners, and Turpin were one of the best returners in football this year. And Brian Schneider's unit actually stopped and held them back. That said, Fassel is one of the best coordinators in football. Pay up for him, bring him here, and you strengthen what has been one of the worst units this season, maybe to being one of the best units next season, which you hopefully look back at all the mistakes they've made, not just this year, but last year in the Super Bowl with the muffed punt fumble that gave the Chiefs a touchdown. In previous years, so many mistakes led to Brian Schneider being fired. Why not bring in one of the best coordinators in football to improve that unit as a whole and beef up this roster going into 2025? One other route they can go is the college route. I don't know if that's feasible or plausible, but you always have to keep your eye open for what maybe the college game may offer to the San Francisco 49ers in 2025. I only have one question, though. Will Nick Sorensen be the next coordinator to be fired by the San Francisco 49ers this season? Obviously, time will tell, and as we await that news, which may come later this week, I cannot wait to hear John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan talk to the media one last time before jettisoning off into the offseason, because that announcement may come as soon as this Thursday. Obviously, time will tell, but in the meantime, don't forget to follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the extra Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. Use that promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And while you await free agent signings and draft content, don't forget to go to SportsSpyder.com. It is your one-stop shop for your favorite team's latest news, podcast, and articles. Click that link down below in the description or go to SportsSpyder.com for your team's latest news and articles. My name is Sterling Bennett. Tell me down below what you think of the Greenlaw news and firing Brian Schneider. Who do you think they should hire to replace him? Tell me down below in the comments. As always, my name is Sterling Bennett, and until next time, stay faithful.